There are some secrets so dark, so impossible, that when they surface, they don't just break your heart, they shatter your entire understanding of who you are. I thought I was going to a routine ultrasound appointment with my son and daughter-in-law, expecting to see my first grandchild's face for the first time. Instead, I watched the doctor's hands tremble as he stared at a screen, his face draining of all color. When he pulled me aside and whispered those words, "Tell your son to file for divorce right now," I knew my life would never be the same. What I saw on that screen connected to a tragedy I'd buried 30 years ago, a loss so devastating I thought I'd never recover. But the truth was so much worse than grief. It was a betrayal that had been hiding in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of my family. The moment I told them what I'd discovered, my daughter-in-law ran out of my house and vanished into thin air. No goodbye. No explanation, just gone. For 5 years, I didn't know if she was alive or dead. My son stopped speaking to me. The police couldn't find her. And every single day, I asked myself the same question. Did I do the right thing by telling the truth? Or did my honesty destroy the only family I had left? What happened next taught me that some bonds run deeper than blood, and some truths are too terrible to bear, but also too important to ignore. If you want to know what that doctor saw on the ultrasound screen, what secret tore my family apart, and whether love can survive the unthinkable, stay with me until the end. This is my story, and I promise you'll never forget it. Please follow this channel, leave a like, and comment below where you're watching from. Your support means everything. Em português, o corpo do texto em inglês terminar com não em caixa alta, terminar com dias depois. Enquanto limpava o sótão, encontrei uma velha caixa de sapatos que pertencia à minha irmã, Clara. Dentro havia cartas de adoção. Uma delas trazia o nome do hospital onde Rachel nascera e um outro nome familiar, Emily Jenkins, com a mesma data de nascimento que a da minha nora. Meu coração acelerou. A data batia perfeitamente. A carta dizia que uma das gêmeas nascidas naquele dia havia sido dada a outra família. Rachel e Emily. A dor me atravessou como um raio. Minha nora podia ser a filha que eu achei que havia enterrado. Mas por quê? Quem faria isso comigo? E por que agora, depois de tantos anos, o destino decidiu me colocar diante desse abismo? Preciso desenvolver essa ideia com muita riqueza de detalhes, emoção e manter o cliff range, deixar pistas e mistérios. A narradora é uma mulher idosa, contando em primeira pessoa. Preciso alcançar 800-1200 palavras. Elementos importantes, está limpando. O sótão dias depois, encontra a caixa de sapatos da irmã Clara. Descobre cartas de adoção. Nome do hospital onde Rachel nasceu, nome Emily Jenkins, com mesma data de nascimento, revela que eram gêmeas. The dust-laden air of the attic swirled around me, telling silent stories of forgotten memories. My trembling fingers traced the edges of Clara's old shoebox, a relic from decades past. One twin separated, one kept a secret that had been waiting to unravel. The hospital's name on the adoption papers seemed to pulse with an unspoken truth. St. Mary's Memorial in Boston, a place that held the key to a mystery spanning generations. Emily Jenkins, a name that now echoed with profound significance. Her birth date matching Rachel's perfectly. The coincidence felt too precise, too deliberate to be random. Capitulo sent a photo na caixa de sapatos. 3 days passed before I could bring myself to do anything other than sit in my living room and stare at the walls. Adam wouldn't return my calls. Emily had apparently gone to stay with a friend in Decatur. That's what Adam's voicemail said. His voice flat and distant like I was a stranger. Mom, we need space. Please don't call for a while. Space. As if space could solve what we were facing. On the morning of November 17th, I woke up to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window and realized I couldn't just sit there anymore. The house felt suffocating, full of shadows and questions that had no answers. So I decided to do what I always did when life became too much. I cleaned. I started with the kitchen, scrubbing counters that were already clean, reorganizing cabinets that didn't need organizing. Then I moved to the bathroom, the hallway, the spare bedroom. By noon, I'd worked my way up to the attic, that dusty, cluttered space I'd been avoiding for years because it was full of things I didn't want to remember. The attic stairs creaked under my weight. They always had. Ever since we'd moved into this house in 1963, when Adam was just a baby and the neighborhood was full of young families instead of the elderly people and renters who lived here now. The air up there was thick and stale, smelling of old cardboard and insulation and time itself. Light filtered through the small circular window at the far end, illuminating dust particles that danced in the air like tiny ghosts. I stood there for a moment, surveying the chaos boxers stacked on boxers. Old furniture covered in sheets, plastic storage containers full of Christmas decorations I hadn't used since Adam moved out 12 years ago. I didn't have a plan. I just started pulling things out, creating piles. Keep, donate, throw away. Most of it was junk. Old tax returns from the 1980s. Broken lamps I'd sworn I'd fix someday. Adam's elementary school art projects that I'd kept for some reason, even though they were just crayon scribbles on yellowing construction paper. And then, pushed into the far corner behind a stack of National Geographic magazines from the 70s. I found a box I didn't recognize. It was a shoeboxa, women's size 7 naturalizer box, the kind my sister Clara used to buy from the department store downtown before it closed. The cardboard was soft with age, and someone had written private across the top in faded black marker. Clara's handwriting, I'd recognize it anywhere, those sharp, angular letters she'd learned in Catholic school. Clara had died in 1998 from lung cancer. She was only 53, a lifelong smoker who'd refused to quit even when the doctors told her she was killing herself. We hadn't been particularly close. She'd always been the wild one, the rebellious sister who'd run off to Chicago in her 20s and only came back to Springfield when she got sick and had nowhere else to go. I'd taken her in during those final months, watched her waste away in the guest bedroom, held her hand when she died on a rainy Tuesday in March. After the funeral, I'd packed up her belongings without really looking at them. Just boxed everything up and shoved it in the attic because I couldn't deal with going through her stuff while I was still grieving. And then years passed, and I forgot the boxers were even there. Now I held this shoebox in my hands, my heart beating faster for reasons I couldn't explain. Something about the word private made me hesitate. Clara had secrets, we all knew that. She'd had relationships with men she'd never introduced to the family, made phone calls, she'd taken other rooms, disappeared for weekends without explanation, but she was dead now. What harm could her secrets do? I sat down on an old trunk and lifted the lid. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with a faded pink ribbon. I untied the ribbon carefully. It felt fragile, like it might disintegrate if I handled it too roughly, and spread the letters out on my lap. They were adoption papers. My breath caught. I picked up the first one with trembling hands. It was dated September 5th, 1971, from Springfield Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where Rachel had been born 2 days earlier. Re-infant female Carter. The letter began. This document confirms the placement of one infant with the family of Robert and Susan Jenkins of Iowa City, Iowa. As per the agreement signed on September 4th, 1971, Jenkins, Emily's last name before she married Adam. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the paper. I read it again, then again, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The date matched. The hospital matched. But why was this in Clara's possession? What did my sister have to do with any of this? I grabbed another letter, then another. They were all related to the same adoption, but written to different people. One was addressed to someone named Dr. Peter Morrison, another to a lawyer in Chicago. And then I found one, a personal letter, handwritten on lined notebook paper that made my blood run cold. Margaret, it began, and I recognized Clara's handwriting immediately. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead, and you've finally worked up the courage to go through my things. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for keeping this from you all these years, but I thought I was protecting you. I thought it was better if you never knew. The truth is, Rachel didn't die alone. She had a twin sister. The doctors told you there was only one baby because I begged them to. I signed the papers. I arranged the adoption. I'm the one who gave your other daughter away. I did it because the doctors said both babies had the genetic condition. They said neither of them would survive more than a few months. And I couldn't stand the thought of you watching 2 babies die instead of 1. So I made a choice. I kept one secret. I let the Jenkins family take the other baby, and I told them she was healthy. And I prayed that maybe, just maybe, the doctors were wrong. I was young and stupid and scared, and I thought I was doing the right thing. But every day since then, I've wondered if that other baby lived, if she grew up, if she's out there somewhere not knowing she has a sister buried in Oakwood Cemetery. I'm sorry, Margaret. I'm so sorry. I hope you never have to read this. But if you do, I hope you can forgive me. Your sister, Clara. The letter fell from my hands and drifted to the dusty attic floor. Twins. Rachel had a twin, and that twin had been adopted by a family named Jenkins in Iowa City. Emily Jenkins from Iowa City. Born on September 3rd, 1971, the exact same as Rachel. I couldn't breathe. The attic felt like it was closing in on me. The air too thick, Too hot, too full of dust and ghosts and 32-year-old lies. I grabbed the trunk for support, my vision swimming, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might be having a heart attack. It all made sense now. The genetic markers, the identical mutation on chromosome 11, the way Emily had always felt somehow familiar to me. Even when we first met a connection, I'd dismissed as just the natural affection between a mother-in-law and her son's wife. But it wasn't affection. It was blood. Emily was Rachel's twin sister. My daughter, the baby I'd never known existed, the child Clara had given away while I'd been too devastated by Rachel's death to notice that something wasn't right, that the story didn't quite add up, that my own sister had betrayed me in the deepest way possible. And now Emily was married to Adam, my son, her half-brother. I doubled over, clutching my stomach, a sound coming out of me that was half sob, half scream. How could Clara have done this? How could she have kept this secret for 27 years? Had let me grieve one daughter while another grew up 3 states away, had died without ever telling me the truth. I looked down at the scattered letters, at Clara's handwriting, at the word sorry that appeared over and over again like it could somehow make this right. But sorry wasn't enough. Sorry couldn't undo the damage. Sorry couldn't change the fact that my son had fallen in love with his own sister, had married her, had gotten her pregnant with a baby that carried the same genetic curse that had killed Rachel all those years ago. I gathered the letters with shaking hands, stuffed them back into the shoebox, and stood up. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to move. Down the attic stairs, into my bedroom, I sat on the bed and stared at the box in my lap. The question wasn't just, how could this happen, anymore. The question was, what was I going to do about it? Voltei ao hospital, encontrei o médico na cafeteria, o mesmo que havia tremido no ultrassom. Quando mencionei o nome Rachel Carter, ele empalideceu, disse que lembrava daquele caso, uma troca de registros nos anos 80, um escândalo abafado por um diretor que mais tarde desapareceu. Seu sobrenome me assustou. Ele confessou. Eu temi estar vendo algo. Eu pedi os arquivos antigos. Ele hesitou, olhou ao redor e entregou-me um envelope branco. Dentro, um teste de DNA de 1991 com uma anotação em vermelho transferido por engano ao Hospital St. Mary's. Aquilo confirmava tudo. Emily era, de fato, minha filha perdida. Mas como contar isso ao meu filho, o homem que se casara, sem saber, com a própria irmã? Preciso criar uma cena rica em detalhes na cafeteria do hospital, com emoções intensas, diálogos impactantes e revelações graduais. O capítulo deve ter entre 8001-200 palavras, com muitos detalhes sensoriais e emocionais. Capítulo 4. O médico e o silêncio. I went back to Springfield. Memorial on November 18, TH. A cold Thursday morning when the sky was the color of old dishwater and a light drizzle made everything look blurred and uncertain. I slept more than 2 hours the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Clara's handwriting. Those words, I'm sorry, burning into my brain like acid. The hospital cafeteria was on the first floor, past the main lobby with its fake plants and sanitized smell, down a hallway lined with motivational posters about hand washing and flu vaccines. I'd been there 100 times over the years when Adam had his appendix out at 14. When my mother was dying of pneumonia, during those 2 terrible months when Rachel was hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed but couldn't save her. It was 10:37 a.m. when I walked in. I remember because I checked my watch 3 times, my hands shaking so badly I could barely read the numbers. The cafeteria was half empty, a few nurses on break, an elderly couple sharing a muffin, a young man in scrubs staring at his phone. And there, at a corner table near the windows, sat Dr. Harrison. He was drinking coffee from a paper cup, reading something on a clipboard. He looked tired, more than tired, exhausted, like he'd aged 10 years in the 4 days since I'd last seen him. His shoulders were hunched forward, and there were dark circles under his eyes that hadn't been there before. I bought a cup of coffee. I didn't want just to have something to hold, something to do with my trembling hands, and walked over to his table. My shoes squeaked on the linoleum floor, and he looked up at the sound. When he saw me, his face went pale. Mrs. Carter. He stood up quickly, nearly knocking over his coffee. I didn't expect we need to talk. My voice came out stronger than I felt. I sat down across from him without waiting for an invitation. He glanced around the cafeteria nervously, then sat back down. I've been trying to reach you. Left 3 messages on your home phone. I unplugged it. I set down my coffee cup, and some sloshed over the side, burning my fingers. I didn't care. I found something. Letters. Adoption papers. From 1971, Dr. Harrison's jaw tightened. He set down his clipboard very carefully, like it might break. What kind of adoption papers? The kind that say my daughter Rachel Carter had a twin sister who was given to a family named Jenkins in Iowa City on September 5, 1971. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. The same Jenkins family that raised Emily, my daughter-in-law, the woman my son married. The color drained completely from his face. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Jesus Christ, he breathed. You knew? It wasn't a question. When you saw those genetic markers on the ultrasound, you knew exactly what it meant. He ran a hand through his graying hair, and I noticed his fingers were shaking. I suspected the surname Carteret's not that common. And when I saw that specific chromosomal deletion, I remembered there was only one other case I'd ever seen with that exact pattern. Rachel. Yes. He looked down at his coffee. I was a resident in 1971. Fresh out of medical school, working the night shift in pediatrics. I was there when your daughter was born. When both of your daughters were born, the cafeteria suddenly felt too hot. I pulled at the collar of my coat. You were there. You knew there were twins. I knew there were complications. His voice was barely audible now. The attending physician was Dr. Peter Morrison. Do you remember him? I shook my head. Those months were such a blur of grief and confusion that I barely remembered anyone's names. He was the head of obstetrics. Very respected, very controlling. Dr. Harrison's hands clenched into fists on the table. When the twins were born, both showing signs of the genetic condition, he made a decision. He told the nursing staff that one of the babies had died during delivery. He had the records altered. He arranged for the second baby to be transferred to another hospital less T. Mary's in Iowa City and from there, adopted out. Why? The word came out like a sob. Why would he do that? Because he thought he was being merciful. Dr. Harrison met my eyes, and I saw genuine pain there. He thought both babies would die within weeks. He didn't want you to go through the agony of losing 2 children. So he made the choice for you. Kept one, gave one away, and hoped that maybe, just maybe, one of them would survive. I felt something break inside me. A sound escaped my throat, something between a laugh and a scream. Merciful, he stole my child. My sister helped him steal my child, and no one thought to tell me. No one thought I deserved to know. Your sister approached him. Dr. Harrison's voice was gentle now, like he was talking to a wounded animal. She begged him to do it, said you were already falling apart, that you couldn't handle losing 2 babies. She signed the papers. She made the arrangements, and Dr. Morrison went along with it because back then he paused, choosing his words carefully. Back then, doctors had more power, more authority. They could make decisions like that and face no consequences. Where is he now? This Dr. Morrison. Dr. Harrison's expression darkened. He disappeared in 1985. There was an investigation, some irregularities with adoption records, allegations of falsifying documents. Before it could go to trial, he vanished. Last anyone heard, he was somewhere in Mexico. He never came back. I stared at him, my mind reeling. All these years, I'd mourned one daughter while another grew up 3 states away, never knowing who she really was. Never knowing that the sister buried in Oakwood Cemetery was genetically identical to her. That they'd shared the same womb, the same birthday, the same cursed DNA. The genetic condition. I said slowly, Emily doesn't have it. She's alive. Healthy. How sometimes it manifests differently. Sometimes one twin gets the severe version while the other gets a milder form, or none at all. It's rare, but it happens. He leaned forward. But Mrs. Carter, the baby Emily's baby eye, saw the markers. The same deletion. The same severity as Rachel had. That child won't survive. The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. Are you certain? As certain as I can be from an ultrasound. I've ordered more tests, but Emily, he hesitated. She hasn't come back. Your son called yesterday and said she's refusing any more medical care. She says she wants to have the baby no matter what. She doesn't know. I closed my eyes. She doesn't know that baby is the product of incest. Yes. Dr. Harrison said the words, I couldn't. And that's what makes this so complicated. Legally, morally, medically, that pregnancy shouldn't continue. But I can't force her. And I can't tell her the truth without violating patient confidentiality and about a dozen other regulations. But I can tell her, I opened my eyes, I'm her mother, her real mother. I have the right. Do you? He looked at me sadly. She's been Emily Jenkins for 24 years. She has no idea Rachel Carter ever existed. No idea you're anything other than her mother-in-law. If you tell her now, you'll destroy everything she believes about herself, her identity, her marriage, her entire life. And if I don't tell her, my voice cracked, she'll have that baby. And it will die, just like Rachel died. And she'll go through the same hell I went through, except worse. Because she have lost a child with her own brother. We sat in silence for a long moment. Around us, the cafeteria continued, its normal rhythm, the hiss of the coffee machine, the clatter of trays, someone laughing at a nearby table. Normal life happening all around us while my world collapsed. Finally, Dr. Harrison reached into his briefcase and pulled out a white envelope. I made copies of the old records. From 1971, the originals are locked in a storage facility, but I found these in the archives. He slid the envelope across the table. There's a DNA test from 1991. Someone ordered it, though I don't know who. Maybe Dr. Morrison, covering his tracks. Maybe your sister. But it confirms everything. Emily Jenkins is biologically your daughter. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper with numbers and genetic sequences I didn't understand. And at the bottom, handwritten in red ink, transferred by error St. Mary's Hospital. Do not file. They knew, I whispered. Someone knew, even back in 1991, and they still didn't tell me. I'm sorry. Dr. Harrison stood up. I wish I had better answers. I wish I knew what to tell you to do. But this is beyond medicine now. This is about what you can live with and what your family can survive. He walked away, leaving me alone at that table with my cold coffee and the envelope that proved my worst nightmare was real. Emily was my daughter, and I had to decide whether to save her from a truth that would destroy her or tell her everything and watch my entire family fall apart. Não em caixa alta e terminar com. Dias viraram semanas. A polícia procurava, mas sem sucesso. Ada mergulhou em culpa. Dia, recebi uma carta sem remetente. Dentro havia uma foto. Emily segurando um bebê recém-nascido. Atrás, uma frase escrita à mão. Não culpe o destino. Ele só devolveu o que é dele. Meu coração parou. Ela havia tido o bebê. E havia desaparecido com ele. A cada dia, eu me perguntava se ela ainda estava viva, se o bebê herdara a maldição genética, se um dia eu veria aquele rosto, que era, ao mesmo tempo, o da minha filha e da minha nora, menos outra vez. Preciso criar uma narrativa emocionante e detalhada sobre a passagem do tempo após Emily fugir, a busca policial, o estado emocional de Adam e Margaret, a carta misteriosa, chegando à foto do bebê, a angústia sobre o paradeiro e saúde de Emily e do bebê usar técnica cliffhanger de deixar mistérios. Pistas, manter em primeira pessoa ambiente americano, detalhes culturais ricos em emoções e detalhes 80011200. Palavras. Vou escrever com muitos detalhes emocionais, principalmente na parte da carta e da foto. Capítulo 6. O desaparecimento. Days became weeks, and weeks dissolved into a fog of waiting and wondering and praying to a God I wasn't sure was listening anymore. Emily vanished that November afternoon like smoke, and despite everything police reports, missing person alerts, calls to every hospital between Springfield and the Canadian border, no one could find her. She'd taken Adam's truck, withdrawn $300 from an ATM indicator at 4:17 p.m., and then simply ceased to exist. The police detective assigned to her case was a woman named Sarah Brennan, probably in her mid-40s, with tired eyes and a way of speaking that made it clear she'd seen too many people disappear. She came to my house twice in the first week, asking questions I couldn't answer. Where would Emily go? Did she have friends in other states? Family we didn't know about? I sat across from Detective Brennan at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten breakfast with Emily dozens of times, where she'd helped me make pies last Thanksgiving, laughing as flour dusted her dark sweater, tried to explain something that made no sense even to me. She found out something about her past, about who she really is. I couldn't tell the detective the whole truth. Couldn't say the words out loud to a stranger. It was traumatic. She was upset enough to run. Detective Brennan had looked at me with those knowing eyes, or upset enough to hurt herself. The question hung in the air like a noose. I'd thought about it every hour since Emily disappeared. The blood on my coffee table, the way she'd screamed, the absolute devastation in her eyes when she'd understood what I was telling her. I don't know, I'd whispered. And that was the truth. I didn't know what Emily was capable of in that state of mind. Adam stopped speaking to me entirely after the first week. He'd moved into a motel on Route 66, The kind of place where long-haul truckers stayed and the neon sign buzzed all night. I knew because I'd driven past it one evening, seen his truck in the parking lot, and sat there in my car for 20 minutes trying to work up the courage to knock on his door. I never did. Because what would I say? I'm sorry I destroyed your life. I'm sorry your wife, your sister is missing and might be dead. Sorry felt like such an inadequate word for what I'd done. Christmas came and went. I didn't put up decorations, didn't bake cookies or watch It's a Wonderful Life on TV like I did every year. I just sat in my dark house and waited for news that never came. The police found Adam's truck abandoned in a Walmart parking lot in Kansas City on January 3rd. The keys were still in the ignition. Emily's purse was on the passenger seat, her phone inside it, battery dead. There was no note. No indication of where she'd gone or what she'd planned to do. She could be anywhere. Detective Brennan told me over the phone, hitched a ride, took a bus. Someone could have picked her up. She paused, and I heard her sigh. Mrs. Carter, I have to be honest with you. After this much time, and given her condition, she was 6 months pregnant, correct? Yes. The chances of finding her alive, they're not good. I hung up and cried until I had nothing left. Adam came by once in late January. He looked terrible thinner with a beard he'd never had before, wearing the same clothes I'd seen him in 2 weeks earlier. He didn't come inside, just stood on my porch, shivering in the winter cold, and said, "If she's dead, it's your fault. If that baby's dead, it's your fault. I'll never forgive you." Then he left, and I didn't see him again for months. I prayed. I'd never been particularly religious, went to church on Easter and Christmas, said grace before meals out of habit, more than faith, but now I prayed constantly. Lying in bed at night, standing at the kitchen sink, sitting in the bathroom at 3 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. Please let her be alive. Please let the baby be okay. Please give me a chance to make this right. But God, if he was listening, didn't answer. February came with ice storms that knocked out power for 3 days. March brought rain that flooded the basement. April arrived with those cruel, beautiful spring days that made everything look hopeful, even when hope was a lie. And then, on April 23rd, 5 months after Emily had disappeared, I found an envelope in my mailbox. It wasn't like regular mail. No stamp, no postmark, no return address. Just a plain white envelope with Margaret Carter written on the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. Block letters, careful and deliberate, like someone had taken time to make sure it was legible. My hands shook as I carried it inside. I set it on the kitchen table and stared at it for 10 minutes, afraid to open it, afraid of what it might contain. A ransom note, a confession, a suicide letter. Finally, I slid my finger under the flap and tore it open. Inside was a photograph. Just one. No letter, no explanation. The photo showed a woman holding a newborn baby. The woman's face was turned away from the camera, but I recognized her immediately. The curve of her shoulder, the way her dark hair fell across her back, the silver bracelet on her wrist, the one Adam had given her on their first anniversary. Emily, she was alive, and she was holding a baby. The infant was wrapped in a white hospital blanket, the kind with pink and blue stripes that every maternity ward in America uses. I could see just a glimpse of the baby's face, eyes closed, skin pink and healthy looking, a tuft of dark hair on top of its tiny head. I turned the photograph over with trembling hands. On the back, written in the same block letters as the envelope, "Don't blame fate. It only returned what belongs to it." My heart stopped. I read the words again and again, trying to understand what they meant. She'd had the baby. Somehow, somewhere, Emily had given birth. And the baby, despite everything Dr. Harrison had said, despite the genetic markers and the chromosomal deletion and all those dire predictions, the baby appeared to be alive. But where were they? Why had she sent this? What did that message mean? I grabbed my phone and called Detective Brennan, my fingers fumbling with the numbers. She answered. I was already crying. "She's alive. Emily's alive. I got a photo. She had the baby slowed down." "Mrs. Carter, what photo? When did you receive this?" I explained everything, and Detective Brennan was at my house within 40 minutes. She took the photograph, examined it carefully, then sealed it in a plastic evidence bag. "Do you recognize anything in the background?" she asked. "Any landmarks? Signs? Anything that might tell us where this was taken?" I'd already studied every pixel of that image, but I looked again. The photo had been taken indoors, maybe in a bedroom, plain white walls, a window with cheap Venetian blinds. No personal items visible. It could have been anywhere. "No?" I whispered. "Nothing." Detective Brennan took the photograph to the station to be analyzed. They tried to trace where it had been printed, when it might have been taken, whether there was any forensic evidence on the envelope, but it was all dead ends. The photo had been printed on standard drugstore photo paper. The envelope was a common brand sold at any Walmart or Target. No fingerprints except mine. Emily had vanished again, leaving behind only this single image and those cryptic words. Don't blame fate. It only returned what belongs to it. I kept a copy of the photo on my refrigerator, held in place by the same magnet shaped like a sunflower that Emily had bought me at a craft fair 2 years earlier. Every morning, I'd make my coffee and stare at that image, at my daughter holding her baby, my grandchild, my great-niece, my biological impossibility and wonder. Was the baby sick? Did it have the genetic condition? Was Emily taking care of it properly? Or was she too broken by what she'd learned to be a good mother? And the question that haunted me most, would I ever see either of them again? Adam came by when he heard about the photo. He stared at it for a long time, tears streaming down his face. His hand pressed against the refrigerator door like he could somehow touch them through the image. She's alive, he whispered. They're both alive. But where? I asked. Why won't she come home? He looked at me then, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. Would you, after what she learned? After what he couldn't finish the sentence? She'll never come home, Mom. Never. Because home is where the lie was, and she couldn't live with that lie anymore. Sem aspas, sem caixa alta no capítulo. Capítulo tio retorno. 5 years is a long time to wait for something you're not sure will ever come. 5 years is 1,825 days of waking up and checking the mailbox. 5 years is 60 months of jumping every time the phone rings. 5 years is countless nights lying awake, wondering if the people you love are alive or dead, safe or suffering, remembering you or trying desperately to forget you ever existed. I turned 63 during those years. Adam turned 32. We still didn't talk much, maybe a phone call on Christmas, a brief visit on his birthday where we'd sit in uncomfortable silence over coffee. Neither of us drank. The distance between us had become a permanent thing, a scar that would never fully heal. He'd moved to Chicago in 2005, took a job as a machinist at a factory that made parts for construction equipment. He dated occasionally. He told me about a woman named Jennifer once, and another time mentioned someone called Lisa, but nothing ever lasted. I think he couldn't let himself get close to anyone anymore. Couldn't trust that he really knew who they were. I stayed in Springfield, kept working at the library where I'd been a clerk for 32 years, shelving books and helping patrons find what they were looking for, losing myself in other people's stories because my own had become unbearable. I retired in 2007, and suddenly I had nothing but time to think. Time to remember, time to replay that afternoon over and over again, wondering what I could have done differently. The photograph Emily had sent stayed on my refrigerator. The colors faded over the years, the edges became worn from being handled too many times, but I couldn't take it down. It was the only proof I had that she was alive, that the baby had been born, that somewhere out there, part of my family still existed. Detective Brennan retired in 2006. Before she left, she came by my house one last time, sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea she barely touched, and told me the truth I already knew. After this long, Mrs. Carter, if Emily wanted to be found, she would be. She's alive, I feel it in my gut. But she's chosen to disappear, and we have to respect that. I didn't respect it, but I accepted it. Then, on September 3rd, 2008, what would have been Emily's 37th birthday, and the anniversary of Rachel's birth and death, my doorbell rang at 2:47 in the afternoon. I was in the kitchen, making iced tea, even though it was too late in the season for it, too close to fall. I almost didn't answer the door. I'd become somewhat of a hermit by then, avoiding neighbors and door-to-door salesmen and anyone who might ask questions about my life. But something made me put down the pitcher and walk to the front door. Some instinct, some whisper in my mind that said, "This is important. This changes everything." I opened the door to find a young woman standing on my porch, maybe 25 years old, with short blonde hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a navy blue blazer and carried a worn leather briefcase. And in her arms, looking around with wide, curious eyes, was a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 years old. Dark hair that curled at the ends, eyes that same shade of brown that Adam had, that I had, that Rachel had in the few photographs I had of her. He was wearing a red t-shirt with a cartoon dinosaur on it and clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. "Mrs. Margaret Carter?" the woman asked. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. Yes, my name is Amanda Price. I'm a social worker with the Kansas Department of Children and Families. She shifted the boy higher on her hip. May I come in? This is going to take some time to explain. I stepped aside, unable to speak, unable to do anything but stare at the child who was now looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. They came inside, and Amanda set the boy down gently. He immediately went to my bookshelf, drawn to the collection of National Geographic magazines I kept in a basket. You can look at those, I managed to say, my voice hoarse. Just be gentle. Amanda sat on my couch, the same couch where I'd told Emily the truth 5 years earlier, and pulled a thick file from her briefcase. Mrs. Carter, I'm here about Emily Carter, or Emily Jenkins, as she was also known. My legs gave out. I sank into the armchair, gripping the armrests. Is she alive? Amanda's expression told me everything before she said the words. I'm so sorry. Emily passed away 3 years ago. In November 2005, she was living in a women's shelter in Topeka when she paused, choosing her words carefully. She had a heart condition, an aneurysm. The shelter director found her in her room one morning. It was quick. She didn't suffer. The room tilted. I heard a sound come out of me, something between a gasp and a sob. 3 years. Emily had been dead for 3 years, and I hadn't known, hadn't felt it, hadn't even suspected. She left some things behind, Amanda continued gently. Not much. Some clothes, a few personal items. But there was an envelope with your name and address, and inside was a letter and a DNA test. She pulled out another envelope from the file. The letter said that if anything happened to her, we should contact you. That you're the child's biological grandmother and have the right to know he exists. I looked at the boy, who was now sitting cross-legged on my floor, paging through a magazine with pictures of African elephants. His name, Daniel. Daniel Carter. That's what she named him. No middle name. Just Daniel Carter. Amanda handed me the envelope. The DNA test confirms everything. He's biologically related to you. And she hesitated. Mrs. Carter, do you know the circumstances of Daniel's birth? Yes. The word came out as a whisper. I know everything. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. Then you understand why this situation is ... complicated. Legally, medically, emotionally. Emily raised Daniel for the first 2 years of his life at that shelter. The director said she was a devoted mother, but she was clearly struggling, depressed, isolated. She refused to give any information about Daniel's father, wouldn't allow any contact with extended family. Amanda looked at the boy, her expression sad. After Emily died, Daniel went into foster care. He's been with 3 different families in 3 years. Good people, but none of them could adopt him because Emily's letter specifically stated that you should be contacted first. Why? My voice cracked. Why didn't you contact me 3 years ago? We tried. The address in Emily's letter was wrong, missing a digit in the street number. By the time we tracked down the correct address, Daniel had already been placed in foster care. And there were legal complications about whether Emily's wishes could be honored, given that she'd been declared mentally unstable in her final medical evaluation. Amanda pulled out more papers. It took 3 years of court hearings and appeals to get to this point. But here we are. Daniel is your biological grandson and great-nephew. She said those words without flinching, like she'd seen stranger family trees. And you have the right to petition for custody if you want him. If I wanted him. This child who was the product of something terrible, who carried DNA that was twisted and wrong, who represented every mistake and secret and lie that had destroyed my family. I looked at Daniel again. He'd abandoned the magazine and was now examining the photographs on my mantle, pictures of Adam as a baby, as a teenager, as a young man at his high school graduation. Pictures I'd kept up even though looking at them hurt. Do you have books about dinosaurs? Daniel asked suddenly, turning to look at me. His voice was small and sweet, with a slight lisp on the S sound. I think so. In the spare bedroom, I stood up on shaking legs. Would you like to see? He nodded enthusiastically, and I led him down the hallway to what had once been Adam's room. Later became a storage room, and now was just full of boxes and memories. I found an old book about prehistoric animals that Adam had loved when he was little and handed it to Daniel. He took it carefully, his small fingers gentle on the worn cover, and sat right down on the dusty floor to look at it. Thank you, he said politely, without looking up. And in that moment, watching this child who shouldn't exist, who carried the genetic legacy of 2 sisters and a secret that had destroyed everything, I felt something break open inside me. Something that had been frozen for 5 years thawed and cracked and flooded me with warmth I thought I'd never feel again. He was just a little boy. Whatever sins his parents had committed unknowingly, whatever chromosomal abnormalities he might carry, whatever complications his existence represented, none of that was his fault. I went back to the living room where Amanda was waiting. The genetic condition, I said. Does he have it? He was tested at birth. Emily insisted on it. Amanda consulted her file. He's a carrier, but the condition didn't manifest. He's perfectly healthy. Some kind of genetic lottery. The doctors said it was almost miraculous. Miraculous. After everything, after all the death and grief and loss, life had found a way. I want him, I said. I'll take custody. Whatever I need to do, whatever paperwork, whatever evaluations, I want him. Amanda smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. I was hoping you'd say that. Today, Daniel sleeps in the room next door, the one that used to be Adam's. That I've repainted a soft blue and filled with books about dinosaurs and space and all the things little boys love. He's 9 years old now, in 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary. And every morning he comes into my room at exactly 6:47 a.m. to tell me he's hungry. It's been 5 years since Amanda Price brought him to my door. 5 years of parent-teacher conferences and scraped knees and birthday parties with classmates whose parents ask polite questions about why a 70-year-old woman is raising a young boy alone. I tell them his mother died and his father isn't in the picture. It's not a lie, just not the whole truth. The whole truth is too complicated, too painful, too impossible to explain to people who live normal lives where the word family means something simple and uncomplicated. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet and Daniel is asleep, I still hear that ultrasound machine humming. That sound that changed everything. That sound that revealed a secret buried so deep I hadn't even known it existed. And I wonder if I could go back to that day, to that cold examination room in November 2003. Would I do anything differently? Would I tell Dr. Harrison to keep his mouth shut? Would I bury the truth the way Clara buried it? Let Adam and Emily stay married. Let that baby be born and probably die without them ever knowing why. The answer is, I don't know. And that uncertainty haunts me more than anything else. Because the truth destroyed my family. Adam lives in Seattle, now moved there 4 years ago for a job in aerospace manufacturing. We talk on the phone maybe twice a year. Awkward conversations where we discuss the weather and Daniel's grades and anything except the elephant in the room. He's never met his son. Never asked a day. The one time I suggested it, there was such a long silence on the other end of the line that I thought he'd hung up. Finally, he'd said, I can't, Mom. Every time I look at a picture of him, all I see is what I did. What we did. I know it wasn't our fault, but that doesn't make it any less real. And I understand. God help me. I understand. Because sometimes I look at Daniel, at his dark eyes and his crooked smile and the way he tilts his head when he's thinking hard about something, and I see Rachel, I see Emily, I see Adam. I see all the people I've loved and lost, all tangled up in this one beautiful, impossible child. The genetic condition never manifested in Daniel. Dr. Harrison, who retired in 2010 but still sends me Christmas cards, called it a miracle. 1 in a million chance, he said. Maybe 1 in 10 million. That child should not exist. And if he does exist, he should not be healthy. Someone up there was looking out for him. Maybe. Or maybe it was just dumb luck. The same kind of cosmic chance that made Emily survive when Rachel died. That made 2 babies from the same womb have such different fates. I've taken Daniel to Oakwood Cemetery 3 times. The first time, he was 6, too young to really understand. We stood in front of Rachel's grave, that pink granite headstone that still says, "Too beautiful for earth," and I told him his mother was buried nearby, though I didn't specify where. Emily's body had been cremated in Kansas. I'd scattered her ashes in a park by a lake she'd never seen, because I didn't know where else to put her. Couldn't bury her next to Rachel without explaining why. Couldn't bring her home to Springfield where everyone knew Adam, knew me, knew too much. The second time we visited the cemetery, Daniel was 8. He'd asked questions by then. Who was Rachel? Why did she die? What happened to my mom? I told him pieces of the truth. That Rachel was his aunt who died as a baby. That his mother had been very sick and very sad. That sometimes life is complicated in ways children don't need to understand yet. But you love me, right, Grandma? He'd asked, his small hand in mine. More than anything in the world, I'd answered, and meant it. The third time just last month, in August 2013, we went on the anniversary of Rachel and Emily's birth. Daniel laid flowers on Rachel's grave, wildflowers he'd picked himself from the field behind our house. Purple asters and black-eyed Susans that reminded me of Illinois summers when I was young and the world made sense. I wish I could have met her, Daniel said. My Aunt Rachel. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. What I didn't say, what I could never say, was that he had met her. In a way, that Emily was Rachel's twin. That Rachel's DNA lived in his veins just as much as Emily's did. That the little girl buried under that pink stone was both his aunt and his grandmother, his past and his future, his tragedy and his miracle all at once. The wind picks up outside my window now, rustling through the oak tree in the backyard, and I think about fate. About whether everything that happened was meant to happen, whether there was some grand design to all this pain, or whether it was just a series of terrible accidents and human mistakes that compounded into something unbearable. Clara made a choice in 1971 that she thought was merciful. Dr. Morrison went along with it, because he believed he knew better than a grieving mother what she could handle. Emily fell in love with Adam because she didn't know how could she know that they shared blood. And I told him the truth because I thought honesty was always right, always worth it, no matter the cost. But was it? Emily died alone in a homeless shelter, heartbroken and destroyed by knowledge she couldn't unknow. Adam lives 3,000 miles away, unable to forgive himself or me. And I'm raising a child at an age when most women are playing bingo and planning their funerals. Yet when I look at Daniel sleeping peacefully in the next room, his stuffed rabbit tucked under his chin, his dinosaur book open on the nightstand, I can't regret it because he exists. Against all odds, against all medical probability, against everything that should have prevented him from drawing breath. He's here, alive, healthy, loved. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe fate isn't about some cosmic plan, but about what we choose to do with the impossible circumstances we're given. Maybe family isn't about DNA. Oh, DNA revealed the truth that set everything in motion. Maybe family is about who stays, who shows up, who loves you even when loving you is the hardest thing they've ever done. I've lost so much. My sister, who betrayed me but thought she was saving me. My daughter Rachel, who died before I could really know her. My daughter Emily, who lived and died without ever hearing me call her that. My son, who can't look at me without seeing his own shame reflected back. But I gained Daniel, and in gaining him, I gained a chance to break the cycle, to love without conditions, to choose family instead of having it chosen for me. Last week, Daniel asked me why I sometimes cry when I look at him. Because you remind me of people I love, I told him. And because I'm grateful you're here, even though my mom and dad aren't. Especially because of that. He thought about this for a moment, his young face serious. Miss Patterson at school says family is the people who take care of you, not just the people you're related to. Miss Patterson is a smart lady, so you're my family, even though you're old. He'd grinned then, trying to lighten the mood. Even though I'm ancient, I'd agreed, pulling him into a hug. And that's the truth I've learned. The only truth that matters after all these years of secrets and lies and revelations that destroyed everything. Blood tells you where you came from, but love tells you where you belong. The DNA revealed the secret. But forgiveness of Clara, of Dr. Morrison, of myself, that's what set me free. If someone asked me what I learned from all of this, I would say simply, not all blood that runs through your veins is family. And not all family runs in your blood. Daniel is my family. Not because of chromosomes or genetic markers or the twisted family tree that makes him both my grandson and my great-nephew, but because I choose him every day, and he chooses me. That's the miracle. Not that he survived, but that love survived. Even after everything, the end. So I ask you this, what would you have done in my place? If you discovered a secret so devastating that telling it would destroy everyone you love, but keeping it would let them live a lie, which would you choose? Would you have had the courage to speak the truth, knowing it would cost you everything? Or would you have stayed silent, let that baby be born, and carried that terrible knowledge alone for the rest of your life? There are no easy answers. Sometimes doing the right thing feels exactly like doing the wrong thing, and sometimes the people we hurt the most are the ones we're trying desperately to save. This story taught me that family isn't defined by the blood running through our veins. It's defined by who stays when the truth comes out. It's defined by who chooses love even when love is the hardest, most painful choice imaginable. DNA can reveal secrets buried for decades, but only forgiveness can heal the wounds those secrets leave behind. I lost a sister, 2 daughters, and a son to the truth. But I gained Daniel in raising him. I learned that redemption isn't about erasing the past, it's about choosing differently in the present. It's about breaking cycles. It's about loving fiercely even when you're terrified of losing again. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about your own family and the secrets we all carry, please Please take a moment to follow this channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps me continue sharing these stories that remind us we're not alone in our struggles. Comment below and tell me, would you have told the truth or kept the secret? I read every single comment, and your perspectives matter. Thank you for listening to my story. Until next time, remember, the truth may set you free, but love is what gives you the strength to face it.